The best thing you can do for the environment food-wise is not going vegan, it is eating local. If you're in, say, Boston and eating an avocado, oh my God, that is astronomically worse for the environment than the person who just went and bow hunted a deer that is going to feed their family for an entire year.
Hey, what is going on, guys? So there was a video that went kind of viral about a week ago from a big Instagrammer named Black Forager. And she identifies as a vegan, but it's a little bit shocking to hear that she identifies as a vegan, given some of the things that she justified in this video. And the video had a very pick me vegan kind of vibe, and it was definitely giving meat eaters good news about their bad habits and how, oh, if you want to continue eating animal products, just go local and things will be totally okay. And this just isn't the case. So similar to Earth Mama Medicine's video, this was a video that had a person going out of their way to just make a shit ton of claims without actually providing sources for said claims. And these videos annoy me the most because there's just so much to unpack. The video is only 4 minutes long and she said so many things. And for me to actually, go out of my way and address every single thing she says, it's going to take a while. So let's get right into it.
The best thing you can do for the environment food-wise is not going vegan, it is eating local.
All right, so this first claim implies that the transport of food should be the number one thing that you focus on when trying to make dietary choices that are good for the environment. And what follows from this implication is that the transportation of food shares a large, if not the largest portion of a food's final carbon footprint. But this is just not the case when we look at data from the largest meta-analysis of global food systems to date. This paper looked at data from more than 38,000 commercial farms in 119 countries and is titled Reducing Food's Environmental Impacts Through Producers and Consumers. When looking at greenhouse gas emissions, the paper did not just look at carbon emissions, mainly because agriculture also emits methane and nitrous oxide. So with these two other greenhouse gases in mind, the researchers decided to express emissions from these farms in the form of carbon dioxide equivalents, taking into account carbon dioxide, methane, and nitric oxide emissions. Overall, animal foods tended to have a higher footprint than plant-based foods. And here is the most important part. Particularly for the largest emitters, most greenhouse gas emissions came from land use change, which is shown in green, and from the actual farming practice, which is represented in brown. If you look at the top of the chart, you will see that transport is represented in red and clearly a very small contributor to emissions. For most food products, it accounts for less than 10% of emissions and even less for larger emitters of greenhouse gas. For example, in beef herds, transport accounts for 0.5% of beef's emissions. So no, eating local per se, at least with respect to greenhouse gas emissions, is not better than eating a vegan diet. Holding everything constant and eating locally grown soy over transported soy might have lower emissions due to less transport, but eating a vegan diet solely comprised of non-local plant foods will result in less emissions than a non-vegan diet comprised of solely local, non-vegan animal products. With this, we can conclude that eating local per se is not the best thing you can do for the environment.
In our globalized food space, some things that seem like they are not causing a lot of harm have humongous footprints. If you're in, say, Boston and eating an avocado, oh my God, that is astronomically worse for the environment than the person who just went and bow hunted a deer that is going to feed their family for an entire year.
It is not totally clear that buying an avocado in Boston is astronomically worse for the environment than a person hunting a deer, considering how little we've established that transport, processing, and packaging contributes to emissions of foods. But let's just accept the premise that yes, going and killing a deer to feed your entire family for a year is more sustainable than buying an avocado when you live in Boston. It is not the case that what is the most environmental is always going to be the most ethical. What if I go to the next strongman competition and had a 400-pound strongman killed because their massive corpse would help feed my family for an entire year and would be less environmentally damaging than me buying an avocado in Boston? Do you really think that would be moral? There are plenty of things that are very environmentally friendly but aren't necessarily ethical. For example, murder.
Just earlier today, I was talking to someone about how on avocado farms, deer are a huge problem. And so you know what farmers will do because it is cheaper than most of the other preventative measures? They will just shoot them.
Oh man, crop dust. So I'm currently writing a big script for a new crop dust video, so just stay tuned for that and this will be addressed. I've seen this argument rising up more than ever lately and it's annoying as f***.
If you're the kind of vegan who gets mad at people for eating honey, I need to ask you, what sweetener alternatives are you using? Because if you're using agave, the monoculture alone to get agave syrup is awful for the environment.
She says if you're the kind of vegan who gets mad at people for eating honey and then eats agave, that you're basically a hypocrite because of the environmental effects of monoculture. Well, first off, a vegan could object to the consumption of honey because of the exploitation of bees and not an environmental reason. So bringing up the environmental effects of monocropping agave syrup as a reason for an ethical vegan to be a hypocrite is just going to be a category error in the case of a vegan making an ethical argument when objecting to honey. Secondly, most reasonable vegans recognize that monocropping isn't good for the environment and that our current kind of plant agriculture can be improved upon to things like regenerative plant farming. Any vegan who cares for the environment, who tells you that plant agriculture as it stands at the moment from an environmental perspective doesn't need to be improved, is just misguided.
I am a vegan that specifically focuses on harm reduction, and part of that practice is recognizing how nuanced and gray area-y our food systems are. If you are sitting on your high horse thinking that you are untouchable because of your food choices while looking down upon others, I need you to check yourself.
So vegans don't even ride horses, so I don't know what the she's even going on about. Jokes aside, yes, there are vegans who are under the impression that their habits entail zero cruelty whatsoever, but at least from my experience, these vegans are just a few, and most are aware that veganism is not perfect with respect to avoiding cruelty. I wouldn't normally go off of my experience to provide evidence for a claim, but in this case, there's not really any stats to substantiate how many vegans think they're causing zero cruelty versus vegans that know they're causing some amount of cruelty. And let's just be clear here about what she's doing when she makes this whole vegans are hypocrites point. She needs to establish what a vegan's normative ethics are before asserting hypocrisy like this. This is one of the most common traits of people who assert that vegans are being hypocritical. They assert vegans are being hypocritical without actually understanding what their normative ethics are and instead just assume them. She needs to find out what a vegan's specific values are and then point out a value which they are violating while being vegan. Until she has done that, she is just standing on highly presumptuous grounds.
Eating local, or even better yet, growing your own food is phenomenal because not only does it have a nearly zero carbon footprint, not only do you know that the ethics behind the food on your plate are sound, but it will make you think more deeply about other food choices that you are making.
Eating local per se does not have a nearly zero carbon footprint. As established earlier, eating locally grown animal products is still going to have a large carbon footprint given how little transport contributes to the average animal product's greenhouse gas emissions. Also, how can one inherently be aware that the ethics of their food choices are sound if they decide to eat local? Is raising animals and sending them to be murdered in a slaughterhouse considered sound ethics if it's local? I'm not even sure what she means by sound. Assuming she just means, your food came from an ethical source, how is breeding, exploiting, commodifying, and murdering an animal, but locally, considered ethical? Does she hold this view for locally exploiting, commodifying, and murdering dogs, cats, and humans? Probably not.
I don't eat backyard eggs, but I don't yell at people who do. If you eat things like Just Egg and you yell at people who eat backyard eggs, honey, what is you doing? Your egg replacement arrives in plastic. Come on.
I'm sorry, but it seems perfectly reasonable for a vegan who eats just egg to be upset at somebody who instead supports backyard eggs, assuming those eggs came from a backyard farm in which the farmer continues to support the breeding of chicks, which entails male baby chicks being ground up alive. Is somebody supporting a business which generates the existence of male baby chicks who are ground up alive not a problem? Or is it a problem, but buying a product that entails the use of plastic is just as much of a problem? How is the use of plastic as bad as grinding up male baby chicks alive?
Do not make food decisions based off of whether or not you feel like you can brag about them or whether or not you feel like it soothes your ego. Make them based on actually minimizing harm to other humans, to other animals, to the environment, all of it.
Yes, agreed, but if you would like to minimize your harm to animals and your carbon footprint, categorically speaking, eating local is not the solution. When it comes to minimizing animal harm and death, eating locally grown animal products clearly increases this utility in the form of breeding animals into existence who would have otherwise never existed and murdering them, whereas it is not so clear that supporting crop deaths actually cause a net increase in disutility. This is because we currently do not have a reason to believe that crop fields actually increase overall death compared to wild field. It could very well be the case that crop fields provide an increase in utility given how horrific the wild is. I am not making the claim that this is the case. I remain agnostic on this, but it very well could be the case. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. This is pretty cringy to watch, and what's even more cringy is the comments of people that were watching her video and we're like, yes, bro, like absolutely 100%, and getting these sort of justifications to continue supporting local farms, which aren't better for the environment than supporting non-local plant farms for plant food, as well as clearly aren't more ethical. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude, even vegans don't get your weird,